Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about one of the 10 topics. The one chosen is cardiovascular and cerebrovascular disease, new basis of early prediction and prevention, from imaging to genetics. This is what we are going to talk about. First of all, what about imaging in the early detection of atherosclerotic disease in the different arterial segments? We developed over the years new technology to address 6 segments of the arterial system. We did this in 12,000 individuals, all without cardiovascular disease from the symptomatic point of view, in which we use on the left coronary calcification to address the coronary arteries, and on the right 2D or 3D perivascular ultrasound, addressing both carotid systems, the distal aorta, and the 2 iliofemoral regions. So altogether, 6 arterial regions. And now I'm going to be presenting 5 findings in the last 2 years or so on the PESA study. A study from 4,000 employees, over 4,000 employees from the Bank of Santander in Madrid, between the ages of 40 and 55 years. And here's the first question. By using the technology that I mentioned, what about the burden of atherosclerotic disease in the 6 arterial segments? Here on the left are males, and here you have between age 45 and 49, for example, one vessel arterial disease, 2 of the regions being affected, 3, 4, or 5. Altogether, what you see is 2/3 of the individuals at this age already have early atherosclerotic disease by the methodology that I mentioned. And in women at the same age, half of them. So this is a universal disease that actually, or a systemic disease, let's say, that starts at relatively young age. This is the first finding. Finding number 2. Is this disease that we detect early in life progresses? And just a follow-up in 3 years with these technologies that I mentioned, we can say that a number of plaques already progress. In fact, there is progression of disease in 41% of these individuals. This is a progression that goes back to the baseline 3 years earlier. So this is a real issue. And this leads actually to very sophisticated technology. Out of the 4,000 people, in 1,000, we did MRI and PET of the 5 arterial systems that we did ultrasound originally. And these are the findings. Actually, in terms of MRI, we look at fibrotic lesions present in 53% of the overall population of 50 individuals in the carotid system, and significantly higher in the iliofemoral system, fibrotic lesions. And here are inflammatory lesions, and that is with PET, the incidence is lower, but we are now searching the possibility, and we think is a true possibility, that these inflammatory lesions that we call fatty streaks at autopsy, actually they move into fibrotic lesions later on. But we are looking at the natural history of the atherosclerotic disease in terms of quality of what is there over a period of 20 years in these actually 1,000 individuals. And this is the 4th finding. What about age and cardiovascular risk factors? Here you have an increase in age. In the bottom, MRI. As you can see, older we are, higher is the incidence of fibrotic lesions. Within blue is the iliofemoral region, and in the others are the other regions that I mentioned. The same with PET. With age, there is a number of fatty and inflammatory lesions that increase, and again, the iliofemoral region is ahead. And here on the right is cardiovascular risk factors following Framingham. No risk factors, 1, 2, or more than 2. Here we have a similar situation. With MRI, higher is the risk factor profile, higher is the number of fibrotic lesions in the 5 segments I mentioned. And here, actually, we are talking on the top with PET. These are inflammatory lesions. So here, what we are saying is that we have a disease that starts at a young age, is systemic, and progresses according to age and risk factors. And this is going to be published, I think, in the next couple of weeks, and it's fascinating. Machine learning. We all use Framingham. We use the European score study. We use different approaches, but now I'm going to be presenting to you what we learned from these 4,000 people when we use machine learning in terms of predicting the incidence of the plaques or early atherosclerotic plaques that I mentioned in their progression. What we found in these 4,000 individuals, a number of variables that were important. Out of 110 that we look at, these are other variables, very important in the incidence and progression of the disease, as you will see. Some of them will be funny to you, like odd, why leukocyte count, why hemoglobin A1C, why vitamin 12. Certainly others you know, LDL, age, cholesterol, and so forth, systolic blood pressure. Well, now we are going to compare the actual risk factor profile as we usually do traditionally, the European score study, the ASCVD approach by the American Heart American College, Framingham at 10 years, Framingham at 30 years. And what we see is no disease, a disease that is one arterial system, 2 arterial system, 3, 4, or 5, doesn't matter. This is the prediction of the different scores of the different lesions. What about machine learning? When instead of these scores, we use the 12 variables I mentioned. Very, very impressive. Actually, these are 2 of the scores that I mentioned in terms of the incidence, predicting the incidence of plaques, so clinical plaques, and this is machine learning. And this is progression, much more accurate and predictive than the conventional scores. What we are really saying, we have to learn a lot about factors that lead to atherosclerotic disease. We are stuck in the conventional risk factors, and there are many others. In machine learning, this is what is giving us the clue that we know very little, and machine learning is going to be quite meaningful to us in the future of addressing cardiovascular disease. And this is just one example. In conclusion, this first part of my presentation about the role of imaging in cardiovascular early prediction and prevention, here we have atherosclerosis is a systemic disease. Second, atherosclerosis begins at a young age, and the educational strategies should not be too late in life, should be much earlier. Actually, we believe should be in children. Third, non-invasive imaging is going to play a very important role for the future. And I'm talking about ultrasound and CT coronary calcification. But certainly ultrasound is giving us a good clue of the early atherosclerotic plaques, fibrotic or inflammatory, in the 2 carotid arteries, in the distal aorta, and in the 2 iliofemoral regions. And here, finally, machine learning has an important role in future prediction of disease. This is all fascinating, it's exciting, and that is why it's so exciting, because now we can begin to treat people appropriately, change risk factor profile by getting into this approach at much earlier stages in life. Number 2, imaging in cerebrovascular disease. This is quite exciting. About maybe 10 years ago, we were doing one of the studies in 6,000 people at an average age of 71 years, the bioimage study. And we look the same thing, early lesions with ultrasound in the 5 regions I mentioned, and calcification of the coronary arteries. But in some people, we injected gadolinium to see what happened with magnetic resonance imaging, as we have done recently in the 1,000 younger people that I mentioned. It was fascinating. We began to see like a correlation between the burden of disease in the 6 regions that I mentioned, and these lacunal lesions in the white matter of the brain. We didn't have any idea of what it was. But I can say that in the last 10 years, a lot of information has evolved suggesting that the same risk factors that cause large vessel disease, they also can cause microvascular disease in the brain. And as the microvascular disease takes place, these lacunar lesions, ischemic lesions, microinfarcts may occur, and they may affect cognitive function. This is actually the hypothesis that has been evolving over the last 10 years. And here we are actually driving our research into this hypothesis of work. Here we are. Risk factors in address large vessel disease. And risk factors in large vessel disease are associated with microvascular disease in the brain. This is the hypothesis. Microvascular disease in the brain affects the metabolism and the structure of the brain. And once the metabolism and the structure of the brain are affected, cognitive function is affected. And here we have Alzheimer's disease, very fascinating. We all think that the cognitive dysfunction is due to the neurons that are affected inside the cells. We are going to show you in a few minutes that the disease is much more complex than that. Let's see how we are working on this hypothesis of work with these 5 boxes. And this is the study. It's a study between Madrid and New York, where we are addressing in this pathway 1 is about 1,000 individuals, 500 with cognitive dysfunction, and 500 perhaps with large vessel disease. You will see in a moment. In the 500 that we are now beginning to approach neurocognitive function, in some, cognitive function is impaired, in others are not. And we are comparing both groups. And basically, when we see these, we go now into the large vessels, the risk factor profile, calcification, carotid, femoral arteries, ultrasound, and we look at the relationship between the brain and the large vessel disease and risk factors. But what is going on in the brain? We actually look at PET for amyloid, and we look at the microvasculature with MRI, functional MRI. This is pathway 1. And in pathway 2, we start actually looking at the large arteries. Who has calcification of the coronary arteries? And from here we go to neurocognitive function, and then to the risk factor profile, to the ultrasound of the large arteries, and to the brain, either with PET or with functional MRI. So it's like a crossover study, starting from the brain in one group and starting from the large vessels in the other. Number 1, is any relationship between risk factors and large vessel disease? We know there is a relationship, of course, but if you focus here on Framingham, here you have the coronary artery calcification, here you have carotid arteries, and here you have femoral arteries, and in black means more significant, and this is less significant. And I don't have to spend too much time here, but certainly risk factor profile affect calcification, carotid artery disease, and femoral artery disease. We know this, and actually the patients I presented, or actually not patients, individuals without symptomatic cardiovascular disease, the numbers were not large enough. But here we are now. Is risk factor in left vessel and large vessel disease, can this lead to microvascular disease of the brain? And this is fascinating. Let's look at carotid plaque volume versus cerebral blood flow, which is how we measure microvascular disease with magnetic resonance imaging. 96 individuals. And certainly there was a significant association between the degree of carotid plaques or volume and the cerebral vascular or microvascular flow. And here we use covariates in age and sex, which may affect microvascular disease. They were taken into account. And here we take into account age, sex, and cognitive dysfunction to be sure that independently we measure carotid plaques in terms of volume versus cerebral blood flow, and was a good correlation. More carotid disease, less the cerebrovascular blood flow by MRI. And this is very fascinating. In yellow means significant effect in the perfusion of the brain, and in red is still a problem, but the perfusion is less affected. So it's a very meticulous and very accurate technology to assess the flow in the brain. And this now that we have a relationship between these risk factors, in this case, or large vessel disease, and we use the carotids, I could present the calcification, etc., which shows the same thing. Now that we have this, is any relationship between microvascular disease and the metabolism and the structure of the brain? Very interesting. This is very sophisticated new technology of MR diffusion. So very basically what this technology is looking is actually how the structure and metabolism of the brain is being affected. And for example, in blue is actually is a way to present the results from MR diffusion. That means the brain may be affected metabolically and structurally. And what we found in 66 individuals, that higher was the Framingham risk factor profile as a parameter of large vessel disease, for example, that may affect the microvascular disease of the brain, as we mentioned before. There was an association with a decrease in the white matter integrity and metabolism. Very interesting. That is, we are beginning to see a relationship between large vessel disease and risk factors, flow in the microvascular of the brain, and metabolism and structure being affected. And actually, this is a different technology, and we use PET. And here is not Framingham, we use hypertension. And what PET is showing is the decrease of metabolism of the neuronal system in the brain. As higher is the hypertension, more is the decrease in metabolism. And we believe this may be related to the microvascular flow of the brain. This being said, this now leads to the next question. Is this change in structure and metabolism of the brain affects cognitive function? And cognitive function, or MoCA, means more than 26. This is an index, is normal. 18 to 25 is mildly impaired cognitive function, and 10 to 17 is significantly impaired or moderately impaired, and this is severely impaired when the index is less than 10. Making the long story short, in the same 66 individuals, when we had an increase in white matter integrity, it was also an increase in the cognitive function. And that is, we began to look at the relationship between these two parameters. Then, in other words, integrity and metabolism with cognitive function. They relate very nicely. And then I don't have enough information now to show to you, but the fact of the matter is when we have significant risk factors, we find the brain structure and metabolism is affected, as we mentioned, and also cognitive function. This is all very fascinating and are pieces of this puzzle that now leads to the last one that I want to present, and that is what happens with Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's has degeneration of the neurons, very complex, and this is actually in the part of the slide. But then there are two aspects that we are now beginning to find. The microvascular may play a role in Alzheimer's, and also thrombotic phenomena. And let me show you the data. Here is the data with Framingham. And what we have seen is higher is the Framingham score, higher is the increase in amyloid through PET accumulation, that is in red, as a parameter of beginning to look at cognitive dysfunction in patients with Alzheimer's. And the results are actually significant as the other results that I presented. But here is the study that was just published by my colleague, Dr. Cortez Cantelli Marta. in which in an experimental model of Alzheimer's, in the mouse model, and it's fascinating, as beta amyloid enters into the brain, here in the circulation, it creates a procoagulant state. And in this procoagulant state, the tissue is actually very rich in platelets and fibrin. If these animals progress into Alzheimer's and cognitive dysfunction, which I'm not going to spend time how we measure it, basically they are in a box, we open a door, and these mouse go out very quickly if the cognitive function is normal. If the cognitive function is abnormal, they don't find the door. So interestingly, when we gave dabigatran, and this has been already published, when we gave recently dabigatran in these animals, we can prevent the progression of the disease. And we begin to think that this is because the clotting system in Alzheimer's may be playing a role in the microcirculation by the beta amyloid that is prothrombotic. And here is the dabigatran. This is leading us now to develop antithrombotic trials in patients with Alzheimer's. And we have actually family members of Alzheimer's, 3,000 individuals in the area of Barcelona. And we are now beginning to look at the possibility of testing this particular hypothesis, the antithrombotic approach in amyloid disease. And here is now, I would say to you, is like a summary of what I have been presenting to you, and that is in terms of the brain. And that is, this is a puzzle with data that has evolved in the last 5 years, but we are now trying to put this puzzle together in Madrid and in New York in patients with cognitive dysfunction or Alzheimer's, and in people with large vessel disease in a crossover study. And basically what we are beginning to see that the hypothesis is probably correct, and that is risk factors and large vessel disease are interrelated. I don't think there is a question about it. Risk factors causing coronary artery disease, the conventional risk factors. Here, conventional risk factors and large vessel disease may lead to microvascular disease of the brain, and we prove this with the use of magnetic resonance imaging flow addressing the microcirculation. Then what we have already preliminary data, at least indirect data, that microvascular disease in the brain may affect the metabolism and the structure of the brain, and these may lead to cognitive dysfunction, as I have shown. And finally, what we have is fascinating data in Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's by itself certainly can cause dysfunction, cognitive dysfunction. And for many years, it has been thought that the whole problem is in the neurons of the brain. Alzheimer's was probably correct. Over 100 years ago, Alzheimer's said, my disease, he was a pathology, is a disease of the blood vessels of the brain. Very fascinating. I don't know if he was talking about the phenomena that we mentioned, how risk factors of large vessel disease may affect the microvascular of the brain, which I think is intimal hyperplasia, by the way, it's not atherosclerotic disease, or whether he was talking about the thrombotic phenomena. But certainly now we are beginning to see that Alzheimer's is much more complex. And here's the situation. If we were able to prevent at an earlier stage in life, which has been the first part of my presentation, this problem, probably we would have a huge impact on the brain, not only in decreasing what we call senile cognitive dysfunction, but perhaps having also an impact in the disease, in the Alzheimer's disease. And you say, well, at the beginning, you said we were going to talk about genetics. I can't. I prefer to focus into the imaging information that we have obtained, particularly over the last year or so, and to present these as one of the 10 topics that may have been interesting to you. Maybe next year, my colleagues may choose one of the 10 topics, the genetic aspects of everything I presented, because we are working very much on this. So I just like to finish by saying that this presentation is the result of the work of many people. Each of these individuals has participated in this work. work that started 10 years ago, but certainly is now crystallizing very significantly, particularly over the last year. And I want to take this opportunity to give thanks to each of them. And to you people who organized this meeting for having chosen this topic as one of the 10 topics of the year. Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody.